What is up, Block Finks over here, and welcome to I guess you can call it an event review video, if that makes any sense. Basically, my wife and I went to a public paranormal investigation at our local library, and I said I was going to take some video and share any evidence we got with you guys. And well, I didn't take any video, nor did I take any of my gear because I didn't know what to expect. And yeah, so instead, you're going to get some phasmophobia where there's some real ghost hunting going on in a game. And then I'm going to talk about my experience and tell you guys a little bit about the event. For those of you who want to know, there are a select few that actually are interested in what I have to say about this. But let's go ahead and start off with the Paranormal Group. Now, I'm not going to mention their name or even like where the actual event was or anything, simply because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings with what I'm going to say, and I don't anyway. I'll give it the Paranormal Group this. They knew their stuff. They knew what they were talking about prior to the event. They went over like their equipment, what the equipment does, and the different types of hauntings and all that. So they knew what they were talking about. Most people could probably learn that through watching Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures and all that stuff. So regardless of how they came upon the knowledge, they knew it, and they accurately described what they were talking about, what they were explaining. So I'll give them credit for that. They knew their stuff, and they were really friendly. Don't get me wrong. They were really friendly. They're really willing to communicate, talk to you, and kind of like poke and prod you to ask more, do more, and it was definitely noticeable in my group because I was one of two dudes in a group of 8, and my wife and I were the youngest people there. The other women in the group were all in the later stage, trying to be nice. In later stages of their life, they were elderly, not elderly like nursing home elderly, just like parent and grandparent elderly, if that makes any sense. Anyway, well, we were definitely younger than the average age in the group, I should say, a lot younger. Anyway, the people from the Paranormal Group were, trying to get us to stay active in that. So I give them credit for that. Although, there were a couple that seemed to, like, for the lack of a better word, ham it up for the crowd. Like, they were, like, you could tell that there were some people that were kind of like hook, line, and sinker in everything they were saying, and they were really playing up to that. Which, I mean, if you know your crowd, if your crowd is easily entertained with that stuff, do it. It's your crowd, Anyway, my main gripe about it was I'm pretty sure the flyer said something about learning more about the building. I think I actually have it right here in front of me. A haunted history of ghost hunting event. Basically, the flyer seems to like you're gonna learn more about the building, as long as getting to do a ghost hunting event. That's what I took it as, and I'm a history buff. So for those of you who didn't know, I should have said this at the beginning of the video. I was part of 2 separate paranormal investigation teams. I was a member of one, and then become a co-founder of a second one. In both of those teams, I was the primary historian. I learned the most about like the history of the places and everything. So that was my shtick. I'm a history nerd, so when they said you learn more about the building, I was hook, line, sinker. But they really didn't provide much history on the building. They did give us a list of names of people that were a part of that building, and when the building was transferred owners and stuff like that. But they didn't really give us much. Like the flyer says, oh, it used to be a funeral home, but they didn't really tell us when the funeral home was in operation. Just that it was in the 70s. And then there was something that said it was actually also a nursing home, a legal nursing home, a illegal nursing home, meaning she didn't have like the permits or something, and she got fines and everything. But that's about it. That's about the gist of what we got. We didn't get like a really deep dive into the history of the building, and mostly until like the most historic information we got from the building came from someone in our group because she used to work there. that was the most. But yeah, so they didn't provide much information, which was kind of a bummer. So let's move on to the investigation. So my biggest gripe with the whole investigation was, and again, I've never been, when I was in a paranormal investigator, I never was part of a public investigation. We always had private investigations, and we'd bring, like the family in, and even some family friends. At the one we went to, we had about, including us, about 12 people in a apartment. So I know what it's like for bigger groups, but I don't know. I don't necessarily know how a public investigation works because I've never really been part of one. But this investigation, there was really no effort to back up any of the experiences or evidence with other equipment. The biggest thing was the REM pod, and it was was like the activity room, I guess you can call it. The library uses it when they have like pumpkin painting activities and stuff like that. So I call it the activity room, not because there's a ton of activity. There was a little bit of activity, but not a ton of activity in that room. It's just where the library's activities take place. The REM pod kept going off in the back, and like the person that was there didn't really try to back up what was going on with other equipment, if that makes sense. So like she just kept saying, oh, the REM pod's going off again, and she just let it keep going off. She never took like a K2 meter or a multimeter, meter, whatever. They were using all three of them, I believe. They never took it over there to see if they can get any readings or anything, which was odd for me because both groups I was part of, when you were getting some equipment or some evidence or with the equipment, you try to back it up with other equipment just so you can say, look, we got this and this. So it adds a little bit more credibility to it. So that was unfortunate. So again, I don't know how public investigations work, but that's how we always did it when we did investigations. You try to back up any sort of evidence or experience with another piece of equipment to further establish that that is something, some sort of evidence, if that makes any sense. Anyway, I also didn't care for some of the equipment, meaning mostly the Pendulum. I don't see those being a scientific tool for the paranormal. Like, it's too easy to manipulate. Like, all you have to do is slightly move your hand and things starts moving whatever way you want it to. So I don't put any credibility in those. Just like I never really prior to that night, I never really had any put any credibility in the dowsing rods, but I feel after that night I am a little bit more open to results from those, because we had some. I definitely loved to been able to review their voice recorders. I really wish now I took my own in, because I wanted to see if we were getting any EVPs along with the dowsing rods, activity, because that would have been awesome to have, or awesome to corroborate what we were getting on the dowsing rods. But yeah, the pendulum. I mean, literally, my hand's not super stable, so pretty much it was just moving the whole time. It never sat still, and some people were taking that as responses, like if it slightly moved front and back, they're like, "Oh, that's a yes," or if it went side to side, "Oh, that's a no." Some people were really excitable. That's another note I have down here. Some people in the group were easily excitable and reading way too much into things, like the pendulum. There's the slightest movement, they're like, "Oh my god!" And some of them even were coming up with like completely absurd narratives about the spirits there. And like one said she was a love interest and all this other stuff. I'm like, okay, all right, no, okay. Anyway, like when we were in the activity room, we were communicating with mainly one spirit, and the people were like, "Oh, there are a bunch of them in here," and it was. I guess I'm glad I got the group I got with the older, more open, but not completely open. Just a little bit of skepticism, whatever you want to say, however it's pronounced. They weren't biting on every little thing, I guess. I don't know, because a lot of the other ones really just made it feel cheesy. The biggest gripe I have with the investigation, other than the second biggest gripe, I should say, is other than the equipment not backing up experiences and stuff with other equipment, is the people from the Paranormal Group didn't really correct the people when they were wrong about things, I guess you can say. Like, so with the pendulum, it was constantly moving, and people were just like, "Oh yeah, that's a yes, that's a no." The woman in the group didn't like say, "Hey, no, it's still moving," so that's inconclusive. Don't read too much into that, or they're just like, "Oh yeah, that." They were kind of reinforcing the negative behavior, I guess. I don't know if it's considered behavior or not, but the biggest one was the spirit box. When we were in the spirit box. Also, okay, another disclaimer: the spirit box is one of my favorite pieces of equipment. It's what I was really into using when we went on investigations, and got some great evidence with it in my time. But I also know that when you're sweeping through FM radio frequencies, so you're picking up every so often FM radio stations, which can especially in the lower frequencies, like the 88 through like early 90, here in Kent County, there are some that will spread over a couple different frequencies, and every time that happened, they're like, "Oh, it said this, it said that," and you can clearly tell when it's the radio station, because you'd hear the music right after on a different one. But they were constantly like, "Oh, that said that," and the person from the Paranormal Group should have been like, "Oh no, that was just a radio station," or something like. Instead, they were like, "Oh yeah, I heard that too." So I don't. Maybe that says something about the Paranormal Group, but they're not as experienced with the spirit box, and they don't. Even though they had like 4 of them, they're ready to go. Maybe they just don't have the experience with the spirit box, or they're just kind of like, again, hamming it up for the crowd and getting them to buy into some stuff. But yeah, I I just wish the people, the group members from the Paranormal Group would have stopped and said, no, that's not that. That was just a radio station or something. along those lines, and so people that weren't just constantly like, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to my personal experiences. So the most interesting thing to me about the whole investigation was the possible communication with a former police chief. So let's just lay it all out. In the activity room, the REM pod kept going off, and once it's kept going off, the woman in front of me, she starts asking very specific questions. She was narrowing in on something, and she had worked in the building back when the building was a police station, town hall, library combo. All three functioned out of that same building, and she worked in the building at that time. So she started asking, like, really narrowing in on a specific person, and she was getting answers that corroborated. What kind of word is that? Anyway, she was getting answers that keyed her in on who she was talking to, and she believes, and I also believe, after a little tidbit of information, that we were speaking with a former police chief of the town, because she, like, all the answers she asked, if it would be him, yes. If it wouldn't be him, no. And then she even asked if it was him, and we got a yes answer with the dowsing rods. So once we start, and she started saying, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Someone else, not the person from the Paranormal Group, someone else in our actual group, asked her who she was trying to communicate with, and she explained that where the REM pod was sitting was actually where the police chief's desk was when it was the police station, and that's where the police chief would always sit, in that back corner where the REM pod was going off. And now we were getting correct answers about his life, and and all that. So for me, that backed it up for me, and that's why I was talking about backing up experiences and evidence with other equipment. That's full blown what I'm talking about right there. So that made me say, oh yeah, maybe we were. Other than that, there was one, so they split us into 3 different groups. One group was talking about how out in the garage where there was an incident where I don't know how to put it without getting demonetized. There was an incident, and someone did something out in that garage, and it caused the end. And they were like, "Oh, he doesn't want us out here. He wants us to go away," and all this other stuff. I didn't feel any of that. I didn't have any experience to even suggest that. I'm not a sensitive or a psychic by any means, but I have experienced in my time as a paranormal investigator, if there's a negative energy in there, I usually feel it. I usually feel when there's you kind of listen to your gut. If you get in the gut feeling that maybe you shouldn't be in there, that's usually a negative sort of energy just wanting you to get out, or even a negative energy negative spirit wanting you to just get out of their space. I didn't feel any of that, and I didn't see any evidence that suggested that. Even when they were trying to push that narrative, I didn't see it. So yeah, I didn't feel anything negative or unwanted. So the best evidence was definitely the communication with the police chief, though. I think that was a bit legit, and easily the most interesting thing that night. So let's move on to my final thoughts. Again, I am a little bit more critical of this because I was a former paranormal investigator, and I had done private investigations galore. I know how they work. I know what you're supposed to do. I know all this. And when they asked who had been part of a paranormal investigation in the past, I was one of 2 people that raised their hands. I'm pretty sure the other person just did like another public one. They weren't because of the questions they were asking. They weren't on a well-informed, I guess, paranormal investigation in the past. But I'd love to see a more serious investigation, not one trying to entertain, if that makes any sense. As a former investigator, I know there's a whole nother side to what you see on TV. When the Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures, you get like half hour. They're hour-long shows. You get a half hour of history of the building, then you get a half hour of actual investigation. But that half hour investigation is literally like 5 hours worth of investigation, or 6 hours, however long they're there. I spent many of long dark nights in a room with a spirit box talking to myself. Okay, I know there's a whole nother thing. I don't need to be super serious or super entertaining or anything. I don't need any of that. I just want to see a serious investigation done with a little bit more time dedicated to each spot. I think we had like 8 or 9 minutes in each spot, and then we moved on. I would love to spend more time in that activity room where we were having possible communication with the police chief, and see if we can get any more information and just kind of build something off of that, because it was quite active. But yeah, that's my final thoughts. I'd love to see it a little bit more serious next time, and a little bit more time dedicated to it. But I'm pretty sure you wouldn't get that out of a public, because you have so many people. You would have to make it pretty much smaller. I'm pretty sure this group has done a private investigation of the library, but I would love to see I'd love to see those results. Like, I wish they kind of would have done it ahead of time and went through all of their stuff and then presented the evidence that they did find, so we could probably as a group try to zone in a little bit more on their experiences. That makes any sense. But that is what I got for you. That's going to do it for today, guys. If you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like down below. It does help me out so very, very much. I do appreciate it so very, very much. If you guys want to see future videos, be sure to click that subscribe button. If you guys want to be notified whenever I do go live or upload a video, click that notification bell. As always, guys, thank you so very, very much for watching. See you guys next time. Bye.